Akila was standing at the altar waiting for Batu under the accusing gazes of those present. No one approved of the 60-year-old woman marrying the 12-year-old boy, but when they discovered the reason, many cried, "This old woman is crazy. Marrying a little boy is the worst mistake she can make. I feel ridiculous being her maid of honor, but the money she paid me I wouldn't earn in a month," said a beautiful young woman whom the bride had chosen as her maid of honor. The ceremony was a lavish affair. Akila ensured that all her guests, as well as she and her young groom, wore the same fabric. Therefore, she ordered many rolls of kint, a fiber also known as kint, from top textile suppliers. This fabric is traditional in African weddings, and she was faithful to all the customs of her culture. So she made that significant investment as she considered that marriage had to be the best and spared no expense. Akila followed the ritual protocol to the letter and wore an outfit consisting of 4 pieces: the blouse or buba, the skirt or iro, the turban or geli, and the shawl or pele. The outfit was ivory-colored, and she requested that everything be made as perfectly as possible. Her groom was also dressed according to African wedding customs, wearing the same ivory color in a suit called dashiki, which consists of 3 pieces: the shirt or buba reaching his knee, the pants, and a hat on his head. She also requested that the meaning of her groom's name be found so that the flowers she carried would have the aroma and color that harmonized with it. Moreover, her maid of honor also had a bouquet tied with typical fabric. From a traditional standpoint, the wedding was perfect. The bride invited many of her acquaintances, but upon learning of the unusual wedding conditions, many directly rejected the invitation, and few openly expressed their displeasure with the situation. The vast majority of guests were townspeople who knew the little Batu, had seen him grow up, but not enough to approve of the marriage. However, the town was poor, and attending a wedding meant free food and drink. Still, many guests and the bride's family ridiculed her for marrying a little boy. However, she told them they were hypocrites because they celebrated the weddings of girls to older men with joy and condemned her marriage to a little boy. For many generations, marrying a girl to a rich man, mostly over 60, ensured a future for the girl and her family. Many men in the town dedicated themselves solely to having daughters, nurturing their growing beauty to attract a man and marry her off. Many did not succeed and, at best, led ordinary lives caring for their families, and at worst, were sold to people with enough money to recoup the father's investment. Generally, they ended up being mistreated by their new families. Akila was a sturdy woman from Angola. She had raised her children with her beloved husband. The man was incredibly wealthy but equally humble. He never liked to flaunt his wealth. Even when he met Akila, she never thought he was so wealthy. He wore common clothes when not working and personally shopped at town markets, even though he could send many stewards to the city's best and most sophisticated stores. Their first dates were in very ordinary places like parks and street parties during festivals. It wasn't until he was convinced Akila wasn't with him for his fortune that he revealed his job and wealth. She didn't believe him. He took her to his mansion, and it was then that Akila realized he was not joking. Soon after, they married in a community-approved wedding and had 7 children, 5 boys and 2 girls. The father ensured his wife and beloved children never lacked anything, who grew accustomed to a life of luxury and comfort. Akila had enough wisdom to notice that money was corrupting her children. They had become spoiled, tantrum-prone, and arrogant. Life had been easy for them, and they didn't know the value of hard work and effort. She feared that when life tested them and money wasn't the answer, her beloved children might be in grave trouble. But her husband didn't see this. The love he had for his children was so great that he couldn't see what they were becoming. When any of the 7 wanted something, they only needed to ask, not to say order it. He insisted that his children had good judgment and would lead their lives with triumph and kindness. The children grew up, and only the eldest son had enough intelligence to complete his studies as an engineer but never practiced his profession. He didn't need to. The other 6 didn't make such an effort. They limited themselves to wasting time with excessive luxuries at city parties with other rich kids and traveling the world with their father's money. All enjoyed their father's money but didn't know where it came from. Some knew their father's business had something to do with diamonds. Some thought he traded them, others that he made jewelry, but no one knew exactly where the family's immense wealth came from. And the truth is, None cared. The only thing that interested them was the enormous check each of the 7 received monthly. Checks so exaggeratedly large that many townspeople hadn't had so much money in many years of work or perhaps in their entire lives. The check was a payment for doing absolutely nothing. None worked or studied. It was a monthly payment for the luck of having a rich father with great love for his children. But one day, many years later, when all the children were adults, along with their checks came a letter from their mother informing them that their dear father had fallen ill and the doctors didn't give him much time. In the letter, the mother earnestly asked each of the 7 to return home to spend their father's last days, who loved and provided for them until the end. None of the 7 went. All thought their mother was exaggerating, that their father could afford the best doctors in the world and prolong his life much more. But sometimes money isn't enough. The man left this world waiting to say goodbye to his children, but was wrong. The only one there, who stayed until the end, was his beloved wife, Akila. Perhaps in his last moments, the father realized the mistake he made in raising his children, or perhaps he died thinking his children were too busy being good people to be by his side. We'll never know. The sad truth is that none of the children wanted to change their plans to take a long flight to their father's house. All had important parties they called work meetings or vacations they had planned with much effort and planning for weeks. But upon learning of their father's passing, all immediately contacted their mother and begged that he not be buried until everyone arrived. Akila, for a moment, thought her children were heartbroken by their father's death, that they would come to say a final goodbye, the goodbye they couldn't give him in life and would regret for the rest of their lives. But she was wrong. None of the children were even interested in seeing their father's body. The only interest strong enough to gather them was the will and distribution of assets. This broke their poor mother's heart, who, upon witnessing this, was convinced her children had been completely corrupted. She saw no trace of the good kids she and her now-deceased husband had hoped they would be. She stayed with the man who was the love of her life, while the children bought new, expensive clothes to look spectacular at their father's funeral. That was their only concern, knowing the large number of billionaire businessmen and the press that would be there to cover the event. All wanted to make a good impression at the funeral. The 7 said a few words in front of their father's coffin, and all the guests all told stories demonstrating their father's generosity and how his actions made them who they are now. They shed a few tears that moved most guests but didn't convince their mother, who saw they were fake tears. They swore with clenched fists to heaven that they would manage the company and all its fortune in the best way possible. They promised their father would be proud of them all. Many guests thought it was in poor taste to talk about money at the funeral. At the end of the funeral, many noted that the children's attitude was of self-interested, opportunistic young people, but beyond commenting on it, none were interested in doing anything about it. Several days passed, and the lawyer gathered the wife and children to read the will and last wishes of the father. The children imagined the immense amount of money each would have at their disposal. At the meeting, they learned about their father's real business, which was owning a large and successful diamond mine. And said mine would belong to the child who worked most closely with his mother. Otherwise, if none wanted to work, the mother would own the mine and all other assets but had to send monthly checks to the children, double the amount each currently received. So we have a diamond mine, and they never said a word, said the eldest son. Well, I'm not going to lower myself to work in a mine. I gladly accept the monthly payment my father stipulated. After all, he said, looking at his mother, when you pass to a better life, I will inherit everything anyway. The other 6, hearing their older brother's words, agreed and decided to follow the same path. All signed the contract stating the mother had to transfer the money on the 20th of each month. The next day, the 7 children left for their wonderful lives, confident that the money they would receive had doubled. None cared a bit about their mother's grief, who more than anyone resented the loss of her beloved husband with whom she had shared her entire life. She worked with him, so she knew the mine's management perfectly and could carry out the company's full management. But it wasn't the same without her beloved. She felt sad and alone, especially when returning to the enormous, cold, and empty mansion. One morning, trying to escape the depression that had haunted her in recent weeks, she asked her chauffeur to take her to the town market where she used to go on her first dates with her beloved. As the car approached its destination, 4 kids quickly crossed the street, and the car almost ran them over. Fortunately, they stopped in time. Akila got out to ensure the children were okay. It was then she met Badu and his 3 siblings. Their whole life, the 4 siblings made and sold their own artisanal bread. Badu told her how his mother taught him, and he taught his siblings. With this humble work, they managed to eat every day. Akila was moved by Badu's kind words. She bought a loaf of bread and was amazed at its delicious flavor. She congratulated the 4 youngsters for their excellent work, bought all the bread they had, and then invited them into the car to take them to their home on the town's outskirts. There, in a small cabin, she met the children's mother. Akila sat with her and talked for hours. Both shared their lives. Akila was so moved by this mother's life and her 4 beautiful children that she gave them some money to help improve their lives a little and left, promising to return and help. The following week was Akila's birthday, her first birthday without her husband. Of the 7 children, only her 2 daughters remembered her birthday. Neither came, but they had enough heart to send congratulatory cards. Akila cried almost all day. She felt sad and alone, but remembered Badu's brave mother. She remembered her promise to help her and thought she could do more than that. She could help many more women. So she got to work and organized a foundation with the mine's profits to help women with low economic resources. But her children, being part of the company, learned that part of the profits generated by the business would be lost in a foolish and ridiculous charitable campaign. They called the company's shareholders and lawyers to vote against the charitable foundation their mother had worked on with so much effort and love. They legally forbade her from spending money on charitable works. This caused the poor mother a feeling of helplessness. Despite her children's disinterest in the business, they had enough power to prevent their mother from doing what she believed was right. Fed up with her children's hard-heartedness, she decided to do something extreme. She went to Badu's house and talked for a long time with him and his mother. They agreed on a marriage, and a few days later, it was announced to the world. The 7 children, upon learning of their mother's upcoming wedding, were outraged. They packed their things and immediately flew to their mother's house. By marrying, their new father would be the legitimate heir to their mother's inheritance, meaning all the fortune, assets, and the mine would go to this little, unknown boy. The 7 siblings talked to their mother and tried to reason with her, but it was futile. She had already made her decision. She wanted to marry little Badu. Seeing they achieved nothing with their mother, the 7 sought the most prestigious lawyers and found a legal way to prevent the marriage, but there was no impediment to carrying out the wedding. There was no way to stop the imminent marriage. Before they knew it, the big day arrived. Akila was very happy. Obviously, none of her children were by her side, and the whole town was talking about the unusual and irreproachable event. No one imagined the real reason behind it. Despite the bad-mouthing and little happiness of those present, the wedding took place normally. It was a beautiful and luxurious ceremony. The bride and groom were happy. For both, it was a great day and a wonderful dream come true. The banquet was exquisite. All the guests enjoyed it while silently mocking the bride and groom and their unusual couple. During the dance, the atmosphere became tense as the bride's 7 children arrived. They stopped the music, took the stage microphone, and began insulting their mother, calling her perverted, ridiculous, stubborn, and manipulative for trying to leave everything their beloved father had intended for them to a little boy they didn't even know. My children, you have been lazy and negligent. You have had everything in life and therefore have not appreciated what is truly important. Your father died surrounded only by my love, because you denied him the possibility of being by his side. You have left me alone. You don't care that I'm eaten up by the discomfort of losing the love of my life. All you care about is money and nothing else, said the woman, bathed in tears while the audience watched the uncomfortable scene in astonishment. How dare you say our father was the love of your life and now marry a boy, said her youngest daughter with a look of disgust at the thought of her mother marrying a little boy. Akila replied, I don't want Badu with lustful eyes. I found him on the street working dignifiedly, as you never did, and upon meeting his mother, I wanted to help them because she has a giant tumor in her abdomen. This caused astonishment among all the wedding guests, including the 7 children. She suffers terrible discomfort and daily sacrifices to prepare the bread the children sell. You didn't allow me to help them through charity, so with this marriage, I guarantee companionship with a new kind, hardworking and loving family, she said, pointing to Bada's mother, sitting at the main table next to the little groom. I will be able to save her life and give her children a decent roof over their heads. There was absolute silence. No one dared say anything or make the slightest sound. According to our law, all my possessions will go to him as my legitimate husband when I leave this world. When she finished speaking, the place remained silent. Everyone pondered the words just spoken in that hall. A group guilt invaded all the guests who had just been mocking behind their backs, calling the woman perverted and obscene and the little boy, calling him a little man and mocking his future life with an older woman. After a few seconds of silence, the sound of slow applause began to resonate throughout the hall. Gradually, the sound increased in speed and intensity. People slowly joined until the hall echoed with a resounding group applause. Whistles and congratulatory shouts joined the chorus of noise. Support for the unusual couple was present. It could be felt in every square meter of the place. Akila started crying with happiness. From her ex-husband's death until the wedding day, she felt lonely and sad. People avoided her, avoided the sad widow of the town's rich man, and then she was just the crazy pervert who was going to marry a boy. But now she felt the support and gratitude of the town that had turned its back on her. Little Batu, his siblings, and his mother were also crying, remembering with gratitude the problems their mother had to overcome to support the poor family. Amid all the applause, cheers, and congratulations, the 7 siblings lowered the microphone and left silently, all feeling angry at their mother, disappointed in themselves, sad about the humiliation they caused themselves, and above all other emotions, confused by the situation their mother had just explained. They really didn't know what to feel. A large part of them felt furious at having taken away what they considered rightfully theirs, but something inside, a small part, told them they had acted wrongly, that their actions were wrong, and they needed to make changes in their lives and themselves. Several days passed, and they talked among themselves, reflecting on their actions and remembering the old days when their father was still with them. And they were a happy family, simpler times when money wasn't everything. They went to their mother's mansion, where she now lived with Batu, his 3 siblings, and his mother, and begged for her forgiveness. They told her they had reflected on their bad actions and attitude. They cried and expressed their honest intentions to change and be better. Akila, for the first time in a long time, saw honesty reflected in her children's eyes and forgave them. All agreed to work in the mine, not for the promise of an even greater reward. They did it to maintain the business together as a family. The money generated by the mine had separated them, but now, all working there, they reunited as a family. The eldest son used his engineering knowledge to improve the mine's state and processes. Other siblings used their influences worldwide to expand the business, and some other siblings decided to return to school to finish their studies and contribute in their way to the family business. The 7 siblings accepted Bada's siblings as their own. They advised them with the knowledge they gained from their mistakes and motivated them not to make the same ones. And Bada's siblings taught their new older siblings how to bake artisanal bread. They all could afford the best treatment for Bada's mother, who, after several months of hard struggle, recovered her health and could live many more years with her new family. Akila, now supported by all her children, founded a successful charitable organization that helps low-income families, not only in her country but worldwide. And her story became a news item that motivated many people with much to share a little with those with less, because they never know when it might change both lives. The family became very united. They all supported each other and achieved everything they set out to do. Here ends our story for today. What did you think? Here are some questions. What did the eldest son study, and why didn't he work in that field? How many siblings remembered their mother's birthday, and what did they send to congratulate her? See you soon. God bless you.